To those who married their first boyfriend or girlfriend, what made you decide they were the one despite never being with anyone else? When I was 18, I was heavily into sports and gaming, and I had no time for anything else. Every day after work was just hours of volleyball, ultimate frisbee, basketball. After that, I would head to a friend's house for dinner and video games, rinse and repeat pretty much every day. During the winter, we would get season passes and hit the mountain for snowboarding the 40 to 50 times a season. Well, during that year, my friend invited a whole bunch of people one weekend, and one of his friend's sisters came along. She had never snowboarded before, and she was completely deaf, but damn if she wasn't the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I blew my friends off and spent the entire day guiding her down the bunny slopes over and over. Couldn't even talk to her because I didn't know sign language, but we didn't care. I had the best time ever. Cut to 1 month later, and I'm driving to her town 4 hours away every Friday right after work and coming home every 4 hours every Sunday evening. 3 months later, we said screw it and got engaged. 2 years later, we were married. That was about 13 years ago, and now the only thing I do is hang out with her every day. I'm a professional sign language interpreter because of her, and we have awesome kids also because of her. The concept of girls and dating wasn't really a priority for me at the time, until she came out of nowhere like a sack of bricks. Lol. The funny part was, she turned me down the first few times I asked her out too, but sometimes, when you know, you just know. Slightly reminds me of a silent voice. Story 2. She just was. I don't know how to explain it. We were friends for a couple of months beforehand, both played trombone and had a similar sense of humor, and she wanted to include me and stuff. I liked her as a person, appreciated her kindness and wit and beauty, and had a crush. She kissed me one night. The world changed. Spent a lot of time talking with her, fell full on in love, and kept finding more and more things to love about her. That was a bit over 17 years ago, and we've been married for the last 13. People still call us cute, and it's occasionally hilarious to correct people that think we're newlyweds or only married for 1 or 2 years. We support each other in ways I never thought possible, and really understand and know each other on an intuitive level. It's a wonderful experience. My writing might be flat, my feelings aren't. Story 3. The summer after 8th grade, a mutual friend knew him through church and told me I'd like him. He called that night, and I swear to you, I fell in love with him just by hearing his voice on the phone. He was 16 and I was 14. He drove over the next day, and I knew the second I saw him, I loved him. We'd barely been apart since then. We started actually dating, like for real, when I was 16 and he was 18. He went away to college and we both stayed in trouble for racking up long-distance phone bills. I resorted to finding all the loose change I could find. I would call him from a payphone. We'd talk until all my loose change was gone. I'd hang up and cry because I missed him so much. He stayed away at college for a year, came home and started at local college because he didn't want to leave me again. We ended up going through college together. Got out, bought and ran a business together, got married, continued working side by side for the next decade. We had a baby about 2 years after we married. We trade off shifts, so one of us was always with our child or would bring her to work with us. We've now been married for 15 years and together for 24 years. He's my best friend and the love of my life. I would never change a thing, and never once have I felt like I missed out on other guys. It's always just been him. People say, when you know, you know. I can definitely say I knew. He's my everything. And I know, without a doubt, he feels the same because he shows me every day with his actions and his words. Story 4. I had gone on a couple first dates before, but never wanted to commit to continuing dating anyone because it was just not worth the anxiety it caused. So I met my now husband at work. Our first date lasted 36 hours. We stayed up all night in my apartment after our first day watching comedy specials and snuggling. My skittish cat was all over him too. And I knew I was going to keep this guy. I've had this weird thing my whole life where I just don't like to be touched or touch anyone. Brief hugs are tolerable, but someone touching my arm or accidentally brushing by me would really ruin my day and make me anxious. My own mother can throw me into a full-blown panic attack sometimes. I have never had that reaction with my husband. I only ever feel safe and comfortable in his arms, and I always find myself absentmindedly rubbing his back, arms, or running my fingers through his hair. Story 5. I'm not married yet, but I want to give my 2 cents. Nearly finished university now, and I've been dating my current girlfriend for about 7 years now. I couldn't even really tell you why we've been together so long, but if I had to give a reason, it'd probably be that we're best friends. We've never had fights that we couldn't work through. We both don't know what the hell's going on with becoming adults, so we're there for each other. We have different interests, but not so vastly different that we're incompatible. I like cars. She doesn't know a Kia from a Ford, but she still occasionally come out to car meets with my group. She's never been on snowmobiles or quads or the like, so I take her for rides. I've never been to a concert, so she brought me to one. I guess a big reason we're still together is that we're best friends learning how to get through life together. Story 6. We met in high school and dated before I could even drive without a parent in the car. Dated throughout the last 2 years of high school and then into college with a breakup for a while where we dated others. Different colleges. Called up and talked again and got back together. Realized we had a good thing going. But this time she was planning on heading out of state to finish up her college education and I was working multiple jobs at a commuter college. Got married the semester before she was finished at the out-of-state school. Spent a lot of weekends driving back and forth to meet up in the middle of nowhere. Drove out with her parents for her graduation to celebrate. I've always gone along well with her family and loved them too. They are different families. She loved my folks as well, and our family differences were things that made both of us better and also mild sources of problems and irrational things, until we figured them all out. Nothing big, just different methods of dealing with problems. We think a lot alike, but make each other better in different ways. School finished up for her and we settled into a new apartment and then life. Watched a lot of breakups and divorces over the years. Some friends have gone through absolute hell. You feel bad for them sometimes. We've been blessed with a pretty mellow time of it compared to some of the crazy stuff we've witnessed. Best thing we ever did was just before college and the later breakup. When we showed interest in being married, we did premarital counseling with a pastor. We learned a lot about the realities of marriage and each other during that few-week process. And it's good to hear stories, especially if you're young and naive, even if you think you know it all. We all did once, about how it really goes. Money, spirituality, intimacy, you name it. It was all on the table and discussed. At this point in our lives, he's also one of our oldest friends. We've kept in touch, although he's long since moved on to another town. We rarely see him, but when we do, it's hugs and thanks. Interestingly, both of our families have been touched by termination, and we were able, some 20 years after first meeting him in completely different circumstances, to have a long conversation with him about it, just a few years ago. His son chose to end it all, and my wife's brother did. We ran into him at a vigil for a mutual family friend who was suffering from cancer. Unplanned. The evening ended up being that discussion quietly away from the group. So amazing how small the world is sometimes. Or perhaps some divine providence, depending upon your worldview. More hugs and more tears, and we felt like we maybe got a small chance to repay him for what he'd done for us long ago. One of our other mentors back then, and someone we spoke with often during that time. He also happens to be a pastor, but was not our counselor. Knew we were doing marriage counseling, that we were in that frame of mind. And he shared his story one evening, being married to someone who became clinically depressed after their second child. He was completely dedicated to her and loved her unconditionally. But he spoke from the heart about how terrifying it was to go to work each day and not know if the love of your life will be alive when you get home. After she had expressed ending it all thoughts. By the way, she got the help and treatment she needed and never has 100% kicked her depression to the curb. But they're old enough now that they'll soon be grandparents, and they had 4 kids. All grown now. Wonderful people. Anyway, probably the number one thing that stuck with me over all these years was this. Someone told us, you won't always like your spouse. You'll always love them. Love is a choice. This year will be our 25th wedding anniversary. She's easily my best friend in the world. And as you can tell by the stories above, our lives have been anything but boring. And when the world kicks at one of us, the world gets to contend with both of us fighting back. Story 7. We met online when we were 16 and 17. It was in England and I was in Australia. We were the youngest people in the little chat group that we were part of and initially just started talking because of that. One day during my summer holidays, we talked for like 9 hours. It was about 4 a.m. for him by that stage, I think, and he just couldn't stay awake any longer. Plus, he knew he was going to be in big trouble for the dial-up bill. Because of time zones and him having limited access during the week, we started sending each other daily emails. It was exciting to wake up and know there would be an email from him there. With every bit of communication we had, I wanted more. I'm usually very shy, introverted, and not keen on meeting or talking to new people. It sends anxiety sky high. But when it came to the thought of meeting him, it was a much more terrifying thought to think about not doing it. And so I knew, really, before he even got here for the first time, that he was important or special or the one, Because to feel so certain that it would be a huge mistake to not take the risk, despite my natural tendency to want to hide under a table, was a once-in-a-lifetime thing. It's really corny and cliche to say, but it really makes me wonder if there is some kind of higher power out there, looking out for us and putting us in the right places to find each other. It seems like it would have been so unlikely otherwise. Whether it was a chance or some kind of matchmaking guardian angel, I consider myself incredibly lucky to have him. We have been together for about 21 and a half years now, and we'll have our 20th wedding anniversary in October. 9 hours of nonstop chatting? That's dedication. Story 8. I was very cautious about dating. I internalized the lessons from other people's lives, and I carefully watched every guy I felt interested in to see if they were worth investing emotional energy. I also avoided going after anyone who I knew was taken or who I knew someone was interested in them. Then my now husband went on a very strange adventure, and a friend called me to see if I'd heard from him. When he finally got his phone charged, he called me up and told me the story, and I realized I just wanted to be sitting next to him, listening to him tell me every detail. I spent about a month mulling it over. He had no traits that I had listed out as not worth dealing with in a marriage, and he was very teachable. He was gentle, compassionate, hardworking, and had very similar goals to my own. I had my opportunities to be with other people. My husband was the only one I ever felt was worth being with. Story 9. Shortly after graduating college, I thought I would just give the whole online dating scene a try. Thought he was really cute and nice to talk to. I wasn't immediately in love. I never am, and in the past I would have thought this was a no-go. I just told myself there was no harm in going on another day because it was fun anyway. Then we went on another one, and then another one, and another. I was not intending on marrying him at first, but there was never any reason to say no to his invites to go on a date or hang out. I always enjoyed myself and liked him just a little bit more each time I saw him. Then I started to really look forward to seeing him and caring about him. I always thought he was cute, but the attraction to him grew. He surprised me throughout getting to know him, with how wonderful he was, not only to me, but to others as well. He was, and continues to be, wonderful to my friends and family. We shared a lot of great memories and adventures together, but we went through some really tough times together too. Even when things were bad and felt like they were falling apart, things were always good with us. That's true, even now. I never had to worry about us. We recently got married. I don't feel like I need to be with anyone else to know that with him, I'm happy and I'm home. Story 10. We met online when I was 16 and he was 18. We lived on opposite sides of the country, so didn't meet in person until 18 months later. But we talked for hours every day. Everyone in our chat room joked how we were going to get married one day before we even admitted to ourselves we liked each other. Instant sparks when we met in person. I'd never really been attracted to anyone before, and I usually hated being touched. But we were instantly snuggly and had our first kiss a week in. We were so cute. After that, we were long distance. I went to the UK for a year after finishing high school, and I feel like during that time we were sort of going out, but maybe not fully. But either way, any day I didn't talk to him was pretty crap. I would go out of my way while backpacking to get online, back in the days of internet cafes and dial-up, to send him emails. Lol. We made it official when I got back to Australia. And we both told our families, and we finally met up for the second time when I was 19 and he was 21. We then did long distance for 6 years. And during that time, we only saw each other in person maybe twice a year. And at no point did either of us want to be with anyone else. We questioned whether we could make it work because of the distance, and it was really hard. We never wanted to not be with each other. I feel like that's how we really knew. We're both pretty antisocial, so finding someone you really like is pretty rare. So it's been 16 years now since we met online. We have 2 kids and have been married 4 years on Thursday. Still not interested in anyone else. Story 11. I met my first girlfriend ever at 18 on Instagram. Sent her, "You're beautiful," and she didn't answer back. Today she saw her ex who cheated on her weeks before, got mad and decided to reply to an unknown guy telling her she was beautiful. Never even have been with anyone else, and I can't even think of this thing. It's been 4.5 years now. And I guess what makes me stay with her even without knowing who I could have met is the fact that it's been 4.5 years. That I'm happy. Because of her. And I couldn't think about being that happy with anyone else. We just share the same everything. The same ideas, always on the same wavelength. She suffers from depression, and even if it could be a fend-off thing, I'll never let her down even in the hard moments. Plus, she offers me a lot of Lord of the Rings collectibles, and I'm a huge Tolkien fan. That may have something to do with that. Story 12. I decided the first week I met him that I was going to marry him. I had had crushes on other guys, but never dated and never told anyone that I liked them because I was shy and afraid of rejection. When I met him, something very instinctive happened, and I pursued him, which I had never done with anyone else. I made it very clear how I felt early on and was very excited that he felt the same. I was 16 and he was 18. We were both extremely stupid teenagers that, by dumb luck, matured into people that belonged together. How I decided that he was the one is when I made the choice to marry him. He and I both believe that love is an action or choice, not a feeling. We made a lifelong commitment to love each other, and that is what makes him the one. We met in 2007, started dating in 2008, got married in 2013, celebrated our 5-year marriage anniversary in 2018, and I am due today with our first baby. I know 10 years isn't forever and we still have a lot of time to test us, but I can't imagine my life without him by my side, even on the days where I feel like ending him. Story 13. Not married, but will be in the next 2 years. Future Hubs and I have been together for 6.5 years. Honestly, we still laugh about the dumb luck it was that we even got together. We're both in our first serious relationship and how we somehow still like each other. We were 15 when we met and became friends for about a month, before he had the guts to ask me out. It wasn't even him, he was too frightened to ask me out on a date face to face and got his mom to help him write out a text, asking me on a date. She and I are pretty much best friends now. From the get-go, the odds were against us. The family is pretty religious and they don't like how lenient his family is. They believe in the mom staying home and raising the kids dynamic, only working when absolutely necessary, and the man being the leader of the house. They attempted to get me to end it with him and find a more spiritual leader when I was 17. I'm still glad today that I fought against that. I don't like to tell people you just know because it's more than that. You may disagree on things and argue, and there may be times when they frustrate the hell out of you. But being with him and seeing him walk into a room makes me feel more comfortable and get that at-home feeling more so than I've ever felt in my childhood house. We're now both nearing 22, about to graduate college, living together, and planning a wedding. My parents financially cut me off when I moved in with him and started having intimacy, and we're navigating through those waters. But as I lay here in our bed at 7:45 a.m., listening to his alarm go off for the 4th time and watching him try to ignore it, I wouldn't change a damn thing. Story 14. I simply look at it this way. 99% of my interactions with my wife are the types of interactions I've had with other women. We talk, laugh, joke, and cry with different people all the time as humans. But what separates our relationship from the dozens we have seen fail? The ability to continue trying when it seems hopeless. When I met her, she was different from anyone else I had interacted with. She was cool and thoughtful. She was introspective and deep. I made up my mind after dating her for just a few months that she was the one for me. I proposed and she accepted. We were barely 20. And now here's a secret to our longevity 18 years later. We keep loving each other. That's it. No secret sauce. No mystical powers required. We just decide to keep trying, especially when it gets hard. And sometimes it gets hard. So we've been on the precipice a few times where I've been unlovable and times where she's been unlovable. We make decisions when the going gets tough to overcome that hardship, whatever the cost, to keep going. It's wonderful when things are right again. To make it work, you have to set aside some of the things that bother you. I'm not talking about foregoing happiness altogether, because what I've recognized is that the immediacy of feelings never surpasses the depth of fact over time. Together, we're better than when we are apart. That's the nature of us. When I get an immediate feeling of, I'd be better off alone or I'd like to be with X, I remember that the immediacy of that particular feeling isn't worth throwing away. So, that is how we're still together after almost 2 decades. Setting aside selfishness and random feelings for what I know makes me happier long term, and that's her. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 15. To be honest, it's difficult to describe in words. I met her 11 years ago as we had a common friend, and when she entered the room, it was game over. It sounds dumb and out of a cheeky love movie, but it is what it is. It was as if the complete room stood still, as if everything changed in that one moment. I knew from the beginning I wanted to know her and that my heart was lost. Unfortunately for us, I met her 1 week before our family was to leave for another country and basically a place 2,000 kilometers away. I was keen on leaving up until this exact moment. We ended up moving, but it lasted 8 weeks before moving back. I had discussions with my parents and everything. The whole lot of, you're going to find other pretty girls here. Sure, but she was the one. I just knew. When I moved back, we continued where we had stopped and came together officially a few months after, and this year, It's going to be 10 years, of which 3 married with a wonderful son of 2 years. I was a lucky, believe me. And it's the one you just know. It's difficult to describe. Even other people and friends who saw us and knew us were sure, you two are going to marry. Luckily we did. Best thing that happened to me right after the birth of my son. Sounds like a classic case of love at first sight. Story 16. People believe in soulmates, but I don't. The reality is there's far more than just one person out there for you. Knowing there are so many people out there, to me, means I need just one of them that is a good teammate. Having things in common and chemistry is important early on, but once the honeymoon phase is over and you've both got a ton of responsibility, you need someone who shows up for you every day. For me, the question is not, is there someone out there better for me? The question is this person that I unconditionally love capable of being a good teammate? When you find someone who has all the qualities that make a good teammate, there's no reason to look around. I recognize that based on math alone and the population of the world, there is someone out there that would probably make me happier. Finding that person would be a complete waste of time given how good I already have it. Why start over when I'm already so happy? Story 17. He's my best friend. He's the one I want to go to when things are good and when things are bad. If I'm upset, even if it's at him, he's still the one I want to talk to about it. I've always had a hard time expressing any emotions, but I'm getting better. I didn't cry for years before we started dating, simply because I was so detached from feeling anything. He's the most stubborn, funny, kind-hearted person I've ever met. I think it really boiled down to the fact that when I envisioned my future, the idea of him not being there made me sad. I knew I could live without him, but I wanted to be with him forever. Loving someone is a choice you make each and every day, in my opinion. We have been together since I was 15 and he was 17. Our 3-year wedding anniversary is coming up. There have been a lot of ups and downs over our relationship, but I'm so glad to be walking through life with my best friend. Story 18. Picturing a life with someone else just made me sad. There might be other people that would be pretty cool and might kind of get me, but they wouldn't be as awesome as my husband. They get me as well as my husband does. My own family doesn't get me like my husband does. Sometimes I don't even get me like my husband does. Our connection is something that doesn't come along every day. We know that, and we also have been told that by friends, family, and even a few strangers. I never dated anyone before me. I had one previous boyfriend, but it wasn't an actual relationship. We started dating at 16 and have been together ever since. We were never an on-again, off-again couple. We're almost 23 now and have our 1-year wedding anniversary next month. Story 19. My best friend from freshman year of high school introduced us near the end of our junior year. Ironically, I was crushing on his best friend, and he was crushing on mine. This same girl. At the time, he was 16 and I was 17. We spoke a lot. Things didn't work out with our respective crushes and we became very close friends. He got along with my family and always made me laugh hysterically. It eventually turned to flirting here and there, and one day we had a bonfire with some friends. I had mentioned to him months ago that I could not find French vanilla K-cups anywhere. That same night, he awkwardly shoved a big bag in my hand after saying goodbye and drove away as fast as he could. I didn't glance down until I went inside where there was a light and he wrote on the K-cups, "Will you go out with me?" So much has happened since then, of course, but remembering his little awkward teenage self in his first relationship always makes me swoon. I could also never imagine him not being by my side. Story 20. Neither of us went into dating lightly. Before we got really invested in the relationship, we knew that we could be fairly compatible. The more we got to know each other, the more I knew he was the best man I've ever met. I can't name any one quality he has or moments we spent together that made me feel sure, but there's so many little things that all added up. He's smart, kind, man of principle and integrity. I followed him across literal oceans, seen him be challenged and stretched to grow, and he has always risen to the occasion. He's a wonderful husband and now father, and I don't know if I could ever love anyone else as much. I think the most important thing we did is to decide that we would face the challenges together. Every relationship has problems, but we went into this thing with a mindset that we would make it work, and we largely have. I assure you that we have not had a perfect relationship, but when we were challenged, we fought to grow stronger and closer instead of letting it push us apart. Story 21. He refused to leave. No matter how many times I told him he could find someone better, no matter how much I tried to convince him it wasn't worth it, no matter how much he had to put up with when it came to my family, over and over and over again. Even when it came to me taking custody of my brothers, he just rolled with it and stepped up without a word. When he was barely an adult himself, he just refused to leave. Basically said that I'm stuck with him unless I convinced him I genuinely didn't want him to be there anymore. no matter how much I tried to push him away or convince him he was making a mistake. I kept waiting for him to realize he didn't really want this, but one day it just hit me. He wants this. He wants me. He wants us. And here we are, still going strong, over 30 years since we met on the playground and still happy. Story 22. My wife is my first and only serious romantic relationship. We met at 14, her, and 16, me, years old. Got married at 21 and 23. For me, it was love at first sight. It's pretty cliche, and I was embarrassed, at the time, with how strongly I felt without really even knowing her. So I kept my feelings to myself. We became pretty good friends and finally started dating a little over a year later. We went through some of life's most transformative years together. When we decided to get married, it seemed like the obvious choice. At that point, neither of us could imagine life apart from each other. And we were at the point where we wanted to start our next chapter. It is a very simple but very profound concept that neither of us wanted anyone else. We wanted a life together, kids together, and whatever the world decided to throw at us, together. We've been married for 8 years now. Story 23. I've known my fiancée since I was 13. We started dating at 17. Both have never been in a serious relationship. I knew she was the one when she met my sister. She's very autistic and has a number of social disorders. It clicked instantly. My sister loved her and was very comfortable around her, which was rare because of the disorders. I even shared a love for Pokemon. My sister embraced wholeheartedly. And the many times that a normal person would have, my fiancée would never yell at her. She would calm her down in such a loving and tender way that I knew she was the woman I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. We got married in October, and my 16-year-old sister is the maid of honor in it. We couldn't be happier with our 2 dogs, and I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with her. By the way, I'm now 22 and she's 23. We dated for 5 years and enjoyed every second of it. Story 24. Not my story, but my brother's. His first girlfriend, now wife, was practically a match made in heaven. You know how some people just seem made for each other? Well, it's like God, family is religious, literally made them for each other. Brother has always had low self-esteem and never thought he would get married. He's a self-described geek and nerd and loves all things sci-fi or comic book or political or to do with machines and planes and ships or history, etc. Basically, if you go on a tour of a museum or castle or historical monument with him, I'll probably know more than the tour guide. Enter the girlfriend. She loves all the things he does. She's into comic books. She's into politics. She works for the Ministry of Defense, so she's religious. She's a geek or nerd who loves all things to do with zombies. Brother got her an in case of zombie break glass thing, and she was ecstatic. When they decided to make it official after a month or so of dating, they actually sat down and talked about the objectives of their relationship and what they were working towards, and worked out any caveats they needed. I personally knew they were made for each other when we were at home watching one of the new Batman movies, and they started discussing if Batman ever had a kid, who with, and if it was a son or daughter, and trying to figure out which universe it was in. They actually got into a small debate about that. Fast forward about 2 years and he proposes to her in the most adorable way ever. They got a judge to sign a statement of facts. He's a lawyer, detailing the relationship and all the reasons he loves her. They got down on one knee and borrowed a line from the West Wing and literally asked, "Would you jump off a cliff with me? Will you marry me?" They're the most adorable and affectionate and loving couple I've ever met. And he is gentle and patient with her in a way he has never been with anyone else. They are my relationship goals, and I can never tell their story without tearing up. Story 25. My wife and I dated throughout high school. I had a couple of girlfriends before we met, but I was pretty awkward and it wasn't more than holding hands and the occasional peck on the lips. I was my wife's only boyfriend though, so I feel we fit in this category. We were taught growing up that dating is a courtship, and you never know when you meet the right person for you. We were both fortunate enough to grow up in a household without divorced parents, but like most people these days, we've loved the ones that were affected by divorce. Both of our families are very strongly against divorce, so I think that growing up we had a permanence in mind that maybe gave dating more significance. We dated on and off throughout high school, with me breaking her heart a couple of times, but she always took me back whenever I apologized and got my crap together. I enlisted just after graduating high school, and my wife wanted to know what my intentions were when it came to starting a family that synchronized well with a military career. I told her that I had no intentions of breaking up with her, and as long as we were able to brave the waters of me being gone for basic training and technical training, I planned on proposing sometime the following year. Fast forward to today, and we have 3 of the 4 kids we plan on spawning into this world, and we will be celebrating our 8th anniversary in August. I guess the answer to your question, or my lack thereof regarding your question, is that my wife and I always knew what we wanted for ourselves because we were blessed enough to have parents whose relationship we wanted to emulate. Once I realized that my wife and I were capable of doing that, I knew I could marry her, even if the circumstances wouldn't boil down to me having an opportunity to propose. Story 26. We're not married, but recently engaged. So almost there. Been together nearly 9 years now. Since I was 16, he was my first boyfriend. I've met a lot of toxic people in my life, including my family. I've been through a lot of crap all throughout my life. I was surrounded by hate. I was used to it. Thinking back, I realize now I never truly trusted anyone. I had so many walls up, it was crazy. I knew my fiancé was the one when I let those walls down. Never had I ever met someone so wholeheartedly genuine and loving in my life. I didn't even know people so nice existed. And even now, I don't think there's anyone else in the world as lovely as him. I'm still working on myself, but he's the only person I'm closest to my true self around. I'm so excited to marry him. Story 27. I've been married to my husband for about 1.5 years. I've been together for 10 years. To provide some context, he'd had a few girlfriends before, but he's my one and only. And we started dating shortly after high school. He's honestly my favorite person in the entire world. Our first date was so relaxing. A hockey game. And he gave me that feeling of knowing someone forever, where you can talk about anything. He's a very relaxed person, and I was kind of uptight, horribly insecure, and wound too tight when we first met. I wasn't my best self. But over the years, he's really helped me grow and become a better version of myself. We both experienced crippling depressive episodes and seen each other at our worst. He always, challenges me in my way of thinking. And for a guy who claims not to be very smart, he has a unique perspective and is profoundly intellectual. We've always had incredible communication, and he's been able to tell me if I've hurt him and vice versa without making a big deal out of it. I'd attribute much of our success to our openness. We never judge. Always talk things out and always find ridiculous, silly things to laugh about. I guess without rambling on too much, we've put in a lot of work. We've grown from our late teens to our approaching 30s. His 30th birthday is at the end of the month, and we want to continue this journey until the end. Do I ever get curious? Of course, but I never change my decision. Sometimes it's best to stick with what works, not dwell on useless hypotheticals. He's worth it, and I want to invest my future and my love in him. Story 28. I knew my wife for about 10 years before we decided to get serious. We met in World of Warcraft, and I'd been friends, chatting constantly when she wasn't grounded for the internet. We always had such an easy time talking and hanging out, discussing anything and everything. Over the years, when we finally met in person, the connection was instant. All those years of online chats and TeamSpeak or vent conversations, mostly on my end, paled in comparison to the real thing. When she picked me up from the airport and I held her hand on that car ride to her city, it was pure bliss. I've never felt such a strong connection with anyone before. The photos and videos we'd sent each other didn't do justice to how incredibly attractive and beautiful she was in person. We're almost too similar, which can be a bit scary sometimes. She's my incredibly smart, witty, silly, and forgetful other half who completes me. We blended together so naturally and quickly. I told her I loved her after only 3 days in person and even missed my flight home because I needed one more day with this amazing woman who had been in my life for 10 years. I eventually saved up enough money to stay with her parents while I job hunted, and our life together took off from there. What made me decide she was the one was that I felt no need to keep searching. I think she feels the same way. I found the love of my life, someone I can relax with at home, pet the dogs, play video games, and take spontaneous Disney trips or other adventures. We've been annoying each other for almost 3 years now, but I wouldn't have it any other way. She's my reason to endure the daily grind of work life and my motivation to come home. My life with her is complete, and I want to continue holding her hand as we journey through life together. Story 29. Our relationship is the best I've ever experienced. I mean that as in I've never seen the other people in a relationship as good as ours in my life. All the adults in my family have only had cruel relationships, so I knew what those looked like, and I knew what red flags to look for, and my relationship didn't have any. No one in my life has ever taken me aside and told me they're worried about me or voiced any concerns about him. My friends love him. My family loves him. His family is nice and they love me. He's a good person. And I don't mean that as in he's just not a bad person. I mean, he's better than the average person. An actual good person. He recycled before it was something the government started making mandatory. He's helped every stranger in need he's ever encountered, except one, a young girl crying on the way to my house when he was 15. And he still feels guilty about it 10 years later. He's vegetarian and won't buy real leather. He gives donations regularly. In the UK, we don't get paid for donating, so it's actually a philanthropic act here. He cuts the loops holding cans together so that animals can't get trapped in them, and there's so much more. That's just off the top of my head. And he does it all without posting about it in social media. He just does it because it's the right thing to do. The only reason I know about this stuff is because he tells me everything. He also brings out the best in me. He's made me more calm, patient, and empathetic, just from leading by example. He's my best friend. We share many of the same interests, and even the hobbies we don't share, he shows interest in and is supportive. We have the same sense of humor, love the same kinds of movies and music, mostly. And while we like different kinds of games, we both love gaming, and there's some overlap so we can play together. And we've stayed strong through every rough patch in our lives. My uncle raised me like a father, getting cancer again. My mother's relapse. My sister's teen pregnancy. And his parents' divorce. Yet his side is the problem family, unfortunately. He supported me through my health problems. Literally nothing has shaken our relationship. Neither of us have ever considered breaking up or questioned whether we wanted to be together. We've talked about stuff like this. We talk about everything. Even hypothetical scenarios like how we would handle separating our stuff if we did ever break up. We jokingly argue over who gets a Steam account. Me, obviously. It's my email address and he already has the main PSN account. I genuinely don't think I could find someone better. And even if I could, I love my husband and wouldn't give up what we have for the potential to have something better with someone else. The other guy would have to be a literal angel to be better than my husband anyway. And I don't believe in angels. We just celebrated 11 years in our first year of marriage last month. I can't imagine my life without him. I'm pretty sure he feels the same. Although I don't think he'd write like 7 paragraphs about it. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.